Here are 7 common pitfalls you must avoid in order to switch from therapy to coaching. Hi, I'm Dr. Paul Jenkins. I am a professional psychologist and I have made the switch. You might be a client thinking of switching from therapy to coaching. You might be a clinician who's considering switching from therapy to coaching. I'll give you 3 pitfalls to avoid if you're the client, and then 4 more specifically for you clinicians. Let's start with those 3 pitfalls that you as a client need to avoid if you're going to switch from therapy to coaching. The first one that comes to my mind is misaligned expectations. Clients might have very different expectations going into coaching than they do going into therapy. And in order to avoid this pitfall, my suggestion is to have that conversation up front. Let's say that you're already meeting with a therapist and you've been thinking about or considering hiring a coach, either to supplement what you're doing in therapy or as a replacement for it. There's a lot of reasons that people might consider this. My suggestion to you would be to have a conversation up front about the expectations for the coaching relationship. In one of your first meetings with your coach, as you're getting to know each other, you might let them know about your experience in therapy and whether you intend to continue that or not. Most coaches will also have a process for you to set some goals or objectives, and it tends to be much more client-driven than clinician-driven. So what you're used to in therapy may look a little different once you get into a coaching setting. Keep those lines of communication open and just be very upfront about what those expectations are. The second pitfall that I've noticed as clients switch from therapy to coaching is a lack of personal responsibility. I think this comes from the traditions in therapy where it tends to be very therapist-directed, whereas coaching tends to be much more client-directed. This will help you to avoid that pitfall. You are in charge. The coach works for you, not the other way around. Now, if you get a really good coach, they're going to give you ways to be accountable for the goals that you set. But don't get confused about who's in charge here. Let me just share a quick story with you about why accountability is so important. And it goes back to driving. You've probably done this. I've done it so many times, I'm kind of embarrassed to even admit it. But you know when you're driving and you get lost in your thoughts and you go right past your exit. I was traveling with a colleague of mine from a conference in Arizona. We were in a car driving back to the airport in Las Vegas, Nevada. So it's right down in that area where it's near the border. Then we were going to get on a plane to fly back to Utah. So we knew that we had missed an exit when we saw the sign that said, "Welcome to San Bernardino County." Okay, Arizona, Nevada, Utah. That's not in any of those 3 states. We had drifted off into California. Now the borders are all fairly close in that particular geographical area, but it was such an instant reminder to me that where I am is because I drove there. I looked down, whose hands are on the steering wheel? Oh, this is what accountability is all about. Instead of blaming someone or something else for where we are, look down, see your own hands on the wheel. This is how we avoid one of the most common pitfalls, that lack of personal responsibility. If you are blaming, you're not in control. Your hands aren't on the wheel. So swallow hard whatever you need to do to accept where you are right now and put that coach to work for you, not the other way around. Pitfall number 3 for clients is typically a resistance to change, which blows my mind sometimes because I think we all want something better, and better is always different. But that's not true the other way around because different isn't always better. So sometimes we resist change because our own brain is predicting, well, that's not going to be any better. That'll be worse. It'll be harder. It'll be more responsibility on me. So we resist changing, even though that's the only way that we're ever going to create something better. As a client considering moving from therapy to coaching, just notice this about yourself, that there may be some resistance to change, and becoming aware of it helps to put you in position to make that one of the aspects of your coaching. I discuss this with my coaches all the time because I get stuck in my own head trash. I'm a professional psychologist and I get stuck in my head trash. So it's important for me to be able to talk about those areas where I see myself resisting change. And that's a little different from therapy, but that's one of the pitfalls I see as we go into the coaching world. Now, I promised you 4 pitfalls that therapists or coaches encounter in making that shift. I'll share those with you next, but will you just take a moment before we do that to hit the subscribe button right down there and click the notification bell too, so that you can be aware every time we have more content like this for you. Okay, pitfalls 4 through 7 are mostly about the clinician or the coach or the therapist. Here's number 4, ethical considerations. I give you this one as the first pitfall that trips up clinicians or therapists or coaches, because unawareness of the ethical limitations of what we can do can actually land you in jail. I remember when coaching first became a thing. I had been practicing as a licensed psychologist, as a therapist for a number of years, and I remember a local coach in our area was arrested and sent to jail for practicing without a license. Practicing what? Practicing therapy. Therapy is a regulated practice, meaning there are laws that govern who can do it and how they can do it. Coaches are not licensed therapists for the most part. Some therapists become coaches. I am both. For example, I'm a licensed psychologist and I am licensed to practice therapy. I don't do it anymore because I've shifted completely over to coaching. But a coach who has not been through the licensing requirements to become a licensed therapist cannot practice therapy. So we have to be aware of what those ethical and legal restrictions are around the shift. I think it's also important for us to be aware of all of the ethical guidelines and best practices that are present in any industry, and that is true for coaching as well as for therapy. Now, here's another pitfall that clinicians run into. It has to do with balancing roles. A therapist who is transitioning into the coaching world is going to notice that there's less direction and more collaboration. The expert or prescriptive role of a therapist gives way to a more supportive and consultative role that a coach has. When I'm training coaches, I often encourage them to avoid giving advice. When in the therapy world, it's actually a fairly common practice for a therapist to advise their client to try this or do that. Coaches, not so much. So this intricate dance of balancing the roles is one of the pitfalls that you want to watch out for. Pitfall number 6 is one that I see professionals in all industries falling into, and it has to do with continuing education or ongoing learning. In the coaching world, it's not prescribed like it is for a therapist. Most therapists, to maintain their license, have to meet certain continuing education requirements. Because coaching is an unregulated industry, that doesn't exist in the coaching world. Now, it might for certain certifications or for certain trainings that are provided, but for the most part, you're on your own to commit to continuing to increase your education and your skill sets. Don't let this pitfall trip you up. And then there's the last one, which is probably one of the biggest ones, and it has to do with marketing and sales. These two words are almost like taboo to a lot of therapists, and the mindset that draws people into the helping industries, whether it's a therapist or a coach, is typically not conducive to the activities that are required to market and sell your services services. For the most part, coaches have to take a more direct role in marketing themselves than a therapist would. In fact, in the world of therapy, sometimes it's frowned upon or considered unethical to do a lot of marketing and sales. This is because in that regulated industry, you're considered to be working with a vulnerable population. And that's why all of the regulations exist there. It's not the same world in coaching. So for people to know about you and actually hire you, you have to do the marketing and sales. And this is where most new coaches, especially if they're coming from the therapy industry, are going to stumble or run into some barriers. Now, I've shared with you these 7 pitfalls so that you can be aware of what to watch out for in that transition from therapy to coaching. If you're ready to take the next step, and if you're a clinician that's looking for some support in this area, go to the URL that's shown right here on the screen, drpauljenkins.com/practitioner quiz. This quiz will help you to know where you are in the process on 7 specific clarities that we use in our coach training. Go take the quiz. I'll share the results with you, and then we'll see if there's another conversation that we could have after that.